Hello, you're listening to Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, a weekly podcast designed to bring you snippets of encouragement to help you as you go about your day. I'm Jenny Guy, your host. I admit that I'm impatient. I want the end of something to appear within minutes of its beginning. But I'm learning that that's not how God works. He uses the middle period, that time from after something starts right up to its end, to do His deepest work in, through, and for us. So today, we're going to look at that middle period, what I call the in the meantime. Let's get started. Today, we're going to look at the concept of in the meantime. I think of in the meantime as the middle period on the journey to a desired result. You're past the beginning and the end hasn't arrived yet. You're in the middle. That middle period, the in the meantime, is characterized by challenges and problems and situations. How we react, the choices we make, what we do during those times determines our growth in God and whether or not we get our desired result. Do we believe God and what He says in His Word and act on that? Or do we go our own way trying to find our own solutions? In my opinion, the Bible is full of situations that I call in the meantime. Whenever a person is told to do something by God and we get to watch the unfolding of those instructions, then we are witnessing an in the meantime. I say this because we get to see the end result of that person's choice to obey or disobey God at critical points along the way to the desired goal. For example, when Israel left Egypt to go to their promised land of Canaan, that whole time of trekking through the desert could be considered as one long in the meantime. The Hebrews were no longer slaves in Egypt, but they weren't yet the citizens of their own country either. Their in the meantime began when they left Egypt. It was supposed to end when they entered Canaan and claimed it as their own land. God's plan was for their journey to take less than a year. Because they chose to disobey God at a critical crossroad in their journey, the Israelites had to remain in the desert for 40 years, thus prolonging their in the meantime. You can read this greatly instructive story in the first 5 books of the Bible. Then there is the in the meantime story of Gideon, which may be familiar to you. He's the person who defeated a huge army of over 100,000 Midianite warriors with only 300 men. But Gideon didn't start out as the fearless leader of this small band of fearless fighters. When we first meet Gideon, he is threshing wheat inside a wine press. I had to look up both threshing and wine press so I could understand the significance of Gideon's situation. Here's Wikipedia's definition of threshing. Threshing is the process of loosening the edible part of cereal grain or other crop from the scaly, inedible chaff that surrounds it. It is the step in grain preparation after harvesting and before winnowing which separates the loosened chaff from the grain. Obviously, threshing usually was done in a large open area so the wind could blow away the chaff. A wine press, on the other hand, was a square or circular pit that had been dug out of rock and was big enough for several people to work in it, extracting juice from grapes to make wine. from a large open field to a pit. Why was Gideon doing this open-air activity in an enclosed space? The reason is that the Midianites, for several years, had so oppressed the people of Israel that they had taken to hiding. From time to time, the Midianites would raid the Israelite villages and destroy their crops and livestock. So the Israelites resorted to living in caves and growing their crops and maintaining their livestock in small areas. That's why Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress instead of being out in the open as he would have normally been. An angel visits Gideon to give him his fighting instructions from God. When Gideon sees the angel, his first response is to question why God would want to give him this task of freeing Israel from Midian's domination. Didn't God know that Gideon came from a family of nobodies within the weakest clan in their tribe of Manasseh, and that he himself was the least in that family? God must be mistaken. Surely he must want a man from one of the families that produced warriors for Israel. The angel assures Gideon that God hadn't made a mistake when he chose him for this monumental task. And thus the process of Gideon's transformation from weakness to strength begins. You can read Gideon's story in the book of Judges, chapters 6 through 8. It's quite exciting and should be very encouraging to you whenever you face a situation that seems overwhelming in its intensity and scope. There you'll see the entire process, Gideon's in the meantime, that he went through. You'll see the choices he made and the actions he took as he was being transformed from a timid wheat thresher hidden in a winepress to a fearless warrior and leader. Gideon's story perfectly illustrates the process we may go through when dealing with our own in the meantimes. The key to successfully navigating that process is given in the book of Joel in the Old Testament. Chapter 3, verse 10 says, "Let the weak say, I am strong." The result of that instruction is illustrated in chapter 11 in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. There you'll find a list of people who overcame seemingly insurmountable obstacles and challenges. Verse 34 in that chapter is significant, for it says that those people, ordinary people like you and me, were made strong out of weakness. That chapter also makes it very plain that it was faith in God, faith demonstrated by obedience to His Word, which enabled them to become strong. The instruction to let the weak say, I am strong, doesn't deny feebleness or frailty. Rather, it acknowledges our insufficiency and inability. That instruction points to God's ability to make us strong and capable, even when our situation seems impossible. As I was thinking about Gideon and his in the meantime, I realized that I had my own story of being made strong out of weakness. While my story is nowhere near as dramatic as Gideon's, I think it does illustrate the process of the weak saying they are strong while they are cooperating with God in their meantimes. Here's my story. It takes place early during my career. I had just assumed the executive directorship of a small nonprofit agency that conducted public policy research and published reports resulting from that research. With fixed 3-year terms for the executive director and all staff, the nonprofit positioned itself as a training ground and launching pad for those who wanted careers in public policy. In a nonprofit as small as ours, the executive director was the Human Resources Department, the Publicity Department, the Product Quality Control Department, and the General Accounting Office, all rolled into one. The desk chair I inherited was suited for someone who was much larger than I. It was too tall and too big. The first time I sat in that chair, I felt dwarfed by it. Money was very tight, and there wasn't any to buy new furniture. The chair was in perfect condition, so replacing it wasn't an option. I was confident in my research and analytical and writing skills. I wasn't confident, however, in my ability to fundraise and lead a staff. And that's what that chair represented to me. Someone who was big enough, mature enough, experienced enough to lead a staff, keep the nonprofit afloat fiscally, and report to a board of directors pulled from a cross-section of the city's corporate and civic leaders. I told myself that I wouldn't have been hired if the board hadn't seen in me qualities that I couldn't yet see in myself. I could do this. I could lead and grow a staff. I could increase the budget. I could oversee the production of research projects that would help guide the city's decision makers. And so it went for 3 years. Every day I went into the office with my game face on, saying to myself, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, all the while sitting in that too big chair. One day, near the end of my term, I was at my desk and realized that the chair fit. To my surprise, it seemed almost too small. No, I hadn't gained weight, and my growth spurt had ended years ago in junior high school. When had the chair changed? When had it stopped being too big, I wondered. As I kept pondering the phenomenon of sitting in a chair that actually fit me, I gradually realized that it hadn't changed. I had. I had grown into it. As I looked back over those 3 years, situation after situation rolled through my mind. I allowed myself the luxury of noting the successes that had occurred on my watch. The mayor's office and the city council had liked our research and regularly used it to help guide their deliberations. None of the staff had quit because they hadn't liked how I ran the shop. The board had gradually come around to accepting my way of doing things, which meant I usually got quick support for my ideas. We were even financially secure, with a surplus to start the next year and plans underway to create an endowment. I recognized that in each instance, my staff and I had risen to meet the challenge, and we had all grown in the meantime. Now here I sat in a chair that fit me, or should I say that I fit. No angel ever appeared to me during those 3 years, but during that time I had read books and listened to sermons that spoke about following God one day, one step at a time. I had been encouraged to believe that God Himself builds incrementally, taking things one step at a time. That God doesn't despise small beginnings, for He knows that if we persevere through our in the meantimes, we will reach the destinations He has planned for us. During those 3 years, without realizing what I was doing, I had been proving in my own life the instruction to let the weak say, I am strong. Hey, maybe I could claim kinship with Gideon after all. As you go through your own In the Meantime, I hope Gideon's story and perhaps my story of the too big chair will encourage you. I hope you heard something today that has encouraged you and possibly given you something new to think about that will motivate or inspire you. If you would like a PDF copy of the show notes for this episode of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, visit my website at jguypublisher.com. New episodes are published each week on Wednesday. I hope you'll join me for another installment of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, be encouraged.